Hey there, folks. Welcome back to the channel. I apologize, it's been a while since I've uploaded. My upload schedule is about as abysmal and inactive as a dead guy in a crypt. But since it's spooky season, I thought I'd try to bring it back for a little bit. Now, I wanted to talk to you about a phenomenon that kind of sits on the back of my mind, especially when I'm in rural areas or camping or something. Am I going to encounter this? I don't know. That is the legend of the black-eyed children, otherwise known as black-eyed kids, or BEKs for short. Now, if you're here, you likely already have heard of the legend, but I'll do a quick synopsis of the stories and legends. I'll have a few stories I found from the internet I want to share, and I'll maybe look into some theories about who or what those things are. Now, the stories of these beings all share kind of a similar pattern. Legend says that encounters will start with a knock at the front door, though reports have shown them coming to windows, back doors, side doors, even car doors, though most often they'll come to a front door. Most often, the knock will come late at night, long after the sun goes down. Now, when the victim opens the door, they'll be greeted with two children who will try to keep their heads down. They'll appear non-threatening and even in need of help. One will typically be older, like in their early teens, and the other one will be younger, typically maybe between the ages of 6 to 10. The kids will have pale skin and ordinary clothes, if not slightly outdated in style, most of the time. The older of the two will ask to come inside. More often than not, there will be severe weather or other circumstances that would make it rather difficult for a child to be out there. And they'll ask to come in, maybe to use your phone or to wait for their parents or something. And most of the time, it states that there isn't any kind of sign that they were out in the severe weather. Like if there's snow, there isn't many stories of footprints, though there have been that show that there are footprints. Or if it's raining, they'll be completely dry. But that's not always the case, but it is enough that I wanted to mention it. But the children will persist and ask to be let inside, often citing that they need to call their parents or they need to come and wait for their parents or something. Things will only become worse when you start to notice their pure black eyes. People report that there's no sclera, no pupil, no iris, just pure black, just void, nothing, just black. And as soon as the victims become aware of their eyes, they'll become aggressive. They'll start shouting and demanding that they be let in, though never attempting to barge or fight their way inside. However, despite the dread and fear the victims feel, they'll feel a compulsion to try to let them in. Something will be telling them to open the door and let them in. Some even report raising their hand to the door handle without even realizing that they are doing it, that they'll just notice their hand is at the door and then they back off. Now, most stories have the victim overcome the compulsion, denying the children access. Most of the time, the children will become increasingly more aggressive. They'll shout from the door for a few minutes and then just disappear without a trace. On occasion, though, they are known to go to other places, other doors, other windows, even second-story doors and windows that there's no physical way that they would be able to reach. And then they'll just be pounding and begging to be let inside. Now, most stories take place in a rural countryside, though if you live in a bustling city, you're not safe from these encounters. There have been reports coming from apartment complexes and gated communities in the middle of the cities. Even people who are stopped in their cars at stoplights or parked have reports of these things. In fact, the first story I'm going to tell you happens inside a car. It's actually the first report of black-eyed children from Abilene news reporter named Ryan Bethel. It was a dark night in Abilene, Texas. Brian had parked his car next to the Westwood Theater and used the orange glow of a nearby streetlight that filtered through his windshield to write a check for his internet bill. It was 1996, so online payments weren't really a thing yet. The scratching of his pen on paper was interrupted by a knock at his window. He glanced up and saw two boys, both in their early teens. though one was clearly older. They kept their heads down, but it was clear they needed some assistance. He rolled down his window, and the older one asked if they could get a ride to their mother's home. Normally this would be an unusual but harmless interaction, but Brian was hit with waves of intense fear. He saw their eyes. Though he tried to hide it from them, he saw the inky blackness normally reserved for the deepest pits or blackest of nights. He panicked and started his car to get away as quickly as possible. He heard them shout from the glass, "We can't come in unless you tell us it's okay. Let us in." He floored it and sped out of the area as soon as possible. Only after maybe 1 or 2 seconds, he looked in his mirror and saw that the children had completely vanished. He told his story to his readers in his mailing list, and word soon spread. Soon reports came flooding in from all over the world of encounters with these beings that continue to this day. So far I've mentioned what the encounters are like, and it always seems to end with the victim refusing to let them inside. Unfortunately, not every story ends that way. In January of 2016, an anonymous woman had awoken shortly after 2 a.m. inside her rural Vermont home. There was a loud bang, and she glanced out her window and saw footprints in the fresh fallen snow. Fearing a burglary, she woke up her husband and had him investigate the noises. He went downstairs and he opened the door. There were 2 children, a boy and a girl, shivering in the cold, without coats or anything to protect them from the blizzard outside. She came down and saw them. She reported that they were dressed like Mennonites. They're a religious group that are similar but different to the Amish, so they'll have like the old-timey kind of button-up shirts, or suspenders, like bonnets and things like that, something you'd see like pioneer era people wearing. Normally, she wouldn't have hesitated to let them inside. She was a mother after all, and she would take care of children who needed help. But there was a sense of dread when she saw them at the door. She asked them with a shaky voice, "Where are your parents?" And they replied in a foreboding tone, "They'll be here soon." And they asked her if they could use their phone. Eventually, her motherly instinct did kick in, and she did let the black-eyed children inside. As soon as they set foot in her home, the energy inside changed. She said their normally friendly house cat had become skittish and fearful. She had left to make hot cocoa to help warm the kids, and her husband stayed with them. When she came back with the hot chocolate in her hands, her husband said that he had suddenly became very dizzy. After this, she noticed their eyes, black as coal. Already inside, they had no need to get aggressive when she noticed their eyes. They just simply asked to use the bathroom and walked down a dark hallway. When they left, her husband's nose started to bleed profusely. She had turned to go get tissues for her husband when the lights and the power to the house completely went out. Everything was shrouded in darkness. There was only a faint light coming in from outside the windows from a street light on the corner. In that dim light, she could see the 2 children standing at the end of the hallway, their silhouettes a deep black against the dim light. They watched her as she began to help her husband, and then they said, "Our parents are here." And then they walked past the couple, out the front door, and then they saw 2 men standing in their driveway, each about 6 feet tall in black suits, and they were by an idling vehicle. They got in the car and they drove away. Over the next few months, though, tragedies began to pile up. Their cat that had been previously very happy and friendly died of a sudden hemorrhage, and her husband suddenly got a rare form of skin cancer. It spread so rapidly through his body, the doctors were left baffled. Though at the time of writing the story, she said the doctors were confident that he would make a recovery. She also continued to have other medical conditions similar to what her husband experienced when they first encountered the children, namely dizziness and profuse and sudden nosebleeds. There are some theories as to what the black-eyed kids are. Some think they're some sort of vampiric spirits, which I guess makes sense if you read the story of what happened to the couple. It seemed like their energy, their health was drained away from them. And also the fact that they can't enter without permission, which is a fairly classical trait of vampires. Some also make comparisons to the specific Romanian vampire known as a strigoi, which is a whole other can of worms that I may dive into in a future video. Now, another common theory is the demon theory, which I guess seems fairly generic, as people tend to label any malevolent spirit as a demon. However, the fact that they need permission to enter into your home also kind of leans into the demon aspect of it as well, as a lot of demonologists claim that lesser demons are very limited in power unless they are actively invited into one's home or life. Also, a pretty macabre theory that ties into the demons is the idea that the children are actually corpses being possessed and puppeteered by demons to try to lower your guard and get into your home. I guess that would explain the pale skin and maybe the potential for black eyes. The second story kind of points to this, and it isn't the only story that involves men in black. It's actually not uncommon in these stories to have men in black show up sometime after the event to kind of investigate and interrogate the victims. Also, there are scant stories here and there that have UFO sightings that precede the event or follow the event. Power outages and health issues are also common in stories of close encounters, whether it be seeing a UFO fly overhead or an actual abduction. Now, for more, realistic explanations. First, there could be a hypnagogic hallucination. Now, hypnagogic hallucinations happen when you're kind of in a very tired state, often when you kind of wake up from a long sleep and your body isn't quite fully awake and aware. Similar to sleep paralysis, but you're not paralyzed, but you can still see things that may be from your dreams. And perhaps all these stories tend to happen at some late time in the day, like late night or early morning. And maybe it's people waking up from a deep sleep or they're on their way to falling asleep, and they have these hallucinations, and maybe it's just the imaginations and hallucinations of a very tired individual. I don't know, maybe. And of course, I think the most likely explanation of them all is that it is all make-believe. Stories posted online to entertain, scare, and maybe teach a lesson to those that maybe the most innocent looking people have some of the darkest agendas. And, who's to say? Sometimes I still think it's the most common explanation for a lot of these things is that it's entirely made up hoaxes or misidentifications of things. But it really only takes one story to be true to change everything. And that's kind of what frightens me, especially when I am out and about in more rural areas, that I'm like, maybe it just takes one story to be true. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Comment any stories or any experiences you may have or thoughts on the black-eyed children. And let me know if there's any other kind of creatures or stories, legends, creepy video games, spooky places you want me to dive more into. And I'll be happy to look into it. Anyways, remember to like and subscribe, share with your friends, and as always, stay spooky, friends.